To me, a great marriage is where you've learned how to work together and support each other, not compete with each other.
Yeah.
And when I see women trying to be kind of tough like a guy, I think, that she's not playing to her strengths. When
Yeah.
men are around a feminine woman, they feel at a little bit of a disadvantage. To me, there's so much more in a relationship than the income.
Mhm. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with developing femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Sherry Lynn, and I am so excited to be here with my dad, Dr. Robert Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So, those of you who are usually here with us know that I'm usually chatting with my mom, but she couldn't be here this week. And we thought it would be a fun opportunity to talk to her husband, Bob. And dad is a doctor. So, it's really fun that we get to talk to him today because he has a lot of expertise. We actually asked on our social media what you ladies wanted to hear from him. And we were so happy to get so many questions. I'm not going to lie, we had to narrow it down to only a few because we don't have time to address all of them. We're going to ask him some questions today from our audience. So there's no topic. It's just all over the place.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Well, yeah, this is a little daunting, but let's see what we can do.
I promise there's no wrong answers. Okay.
Yeah, well,
So I tried to separate these into a lot of questions that you got about mom, like people wanting
okay.
to know
Yeah.
about her and kind of things
Hmm.
about your relationship with her. And then there's a few that have to do with troubled relationships, of course. I want to get your opinion. And then there's a few
Okay.
others that are just kind of random. So
Okay.
what made you want to marry Dixie?
Oh boy. I actually met her in an English class, and
Oh,
I thought she was pretty. So, I think that gets your attention. And but I found that there's got to be a whole lot more than that. There can't just be pretty. But anyway, I think how it started was I missed a class. I came in and she happened to be sitting beside me. And I just kind of leaned over and said, "What was the assignment for yesterday?" And she answered. It was pretty simple. I've had people say, "Well, what are your pickup lines?" Well, I didn't know about pickup lines back then. I just said, "What was the assignment?" She told me. And I think after that in class, we'd kind of chat a little bit and one thing another. And then at some point, I think as we left class, we just started walking and talking, and then okay, well, see you tomorrow. There was a lot to her. I didn't realize at the time that I'd met a fascinating woman. She admired me. She made me appreciate my masculinity. And it's like, gee, this is kind of neat. I think I asked her to go tubing, possibly the first date. I'd have to ask her. She remembers this more in detail than I did. 'Cause I
yeah.
had dated a lot and met a lot of girls, but there was something just different about her. We went tubing, the big tubes on the snow. We were right near a ski resort, and so we went up there, and it was a huge tube, and she bounced off and did a face plant into the snow, into the ice, and ripped up the side of her face.
Oh
So
no.
and she felt so bad because this was like a first date, and she looked kind of beat up, and I felt bad because I thought, good grief, I take her tubing. Thought we were going to have
Yeah.
some great fun, and it turned out. And anyway, she ended up in the hospital for a day or two trying to get this infection going. And so I started visiting her in the hospital, and that's kind of how things started. But I realized there was just more to her than, she was pretty, and I could tell she took good care of herself. She was smart,
Yeah.
but there was just more to her. And I remember the first time that I saw her play the guitar. She was kind of shy, really. She was kind of a bit shy. But I remember that somehow the guitar music brought out a little more to her. I remember watching her. She has long, pretty, artistic fingers. And I remember watching her picking on that guitar and singing. She had this crystal clear voice, and it was so pretty. And I just remember thinking, she's kind of an amazing person. Now, what I didn't realize is that, now after 50 years, that was just such a small part
Yeah.
of what I fell in love with. I guess she's sort of, you could say, stole my heart. But I found that really I fall in love with her again every day. She's just so there's just so much to her. I mean, she's written this book, and I say to people, that should be her autobiography or something, because this is her. It isn't like
Yeah.
something she does as a technique. And they're part of her.
Yeah.
And this is just the way she is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah. It sounds like you just really felt like she had the whole package for you. It sounds like.
Well, it's like she was perfect for me. I had dated a lot, but this was such a perfect fit. I remember the first time I held her hand, I felt like I'm home.
Well, that takes care of actually the next question, or one of them,
Okay.
which was what about her stood out from other girls that you dated?
There's something about her that has always kind of got to me, and that is the way she looks at me. I mean, she does so many things, and that's great. And I can say, boy, I really admire this, and that's wonderful. But she has a way of looking at me like I'm great. Now, she's been married to me for over 50 years. She knows my weaknesses. She knows I've got a messy desk and sometimes leave papers around. She realizes some of the downside, but she always looks at me like she thinks I'm amazing. And it kind of inspires me, makes me want to be that person.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's really sweet. What is your favorite memory of her?
We have got so many. I'll tell you, maybe one of the things that is really stuck in there forever is the birth of our first child. I remember she was scared. This was new. We didn't know. And we were in a kind of a waiting area to go into the delivery room. And there was another woman kind of a little bit down the hall, was just screaming and cussing out her husband for what he'd done to her. And we were kind of just looking at each other and like, oh no. Man, what is this? And then the baby was born, and they allowed me to come in, which I really appreciated. And I saw this baby come out, and it was wrapped in this kind of covering. And I thought it looked like an alien. And I was like, oh no. Now, and then no, it scared me. And I said, and I was just, this was a memory or an experience I'll never forget. Then they cleaned this little baby up. They took all this membrane stuff off and they cleaned her all up. And I saw her in the, kind of like little viewing area that they had in the hospital. Yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's the prettiest little baby in this whole thing. There were 20 babies or something in there. It was just so bonding and so, I don't know, unforgettable. And Dixie was such a trooper through it. And I think she really wanted to have a baby. In fact, when we first got married, she said she wanted a monkey. She said, I've always wanted a monkey. And I thought, oh my gosh. But what I realized is
I've never heard this before.
I know I probably shouldn't get into all this stuff, but anyway, she wanted a monkey, and I thought, oh my goodness. Then she got pregnant, which was, probably an answer to the situation that was better than the monkey, right?
Yeah.
Really, she wanted to have a baby.
So those are the mom questions. So next moves into what do you think is the most valuable quality of a wife? It doesn't have to be of your wife, just of a wife.
Boy, that's a bit of a tough one too. I suppose all the things we talk about in Fascinating Womanhood, like admiration, but to me, I think it's trust, that I can trust that I can talk to her. I can be myself. She can trust me and be herself. We're going to accept each other. And even though, we know our faults and stuff, we look to the better in each other and try to help each other. It's almost like we're kind of each other's best friend. We're both supporting each other. My easiest way to answer that.
No, that's great. Love that. Ooh. Do you believe in a submissive relationship where the wife is submissive and the man is the master?
Boy, we have talked about that so much. And I just really don't like that concept of master slave. I think that's an unfortunate approach to a relationship. Dixie and I are very much partners. As she talks about in the book, I'm more a task leader and she's more of a relationship leader. And when we work together, my goodness, it works really well.
Yeah.
So I really am not, I'm not the master slave. And we've even talked about submissiveness. And in a way, we both submit to each other in different areas. She's got her core strengths. I do too. She defers to me in some areas and I defer to her in others. I mean, in the kitchen, I'm purely kitchen help, and because she knows what she's doing there. And I kind of I defer to her. And so I think we sustain each other. We
Yeah.
like the word
Yeah.
sustaining rather than submission, because in a great relationship, I think it's really more of a partnership. One person doesn't make all the decisions or have all the control. I think that's unwise. I need to listen to her because she sometimes picks up on things that I don't.
Yeah. And I
So
do have to add to, for just the audience, that Helen Andelin and her husband did not have a master slave relationship either. That was misunderstood. They did not have that kind of relationship.
well, she thought that she took it out of biblical scripture. And, if I talked to her about it, she said, well, yeah, no, what I mean is more almost submitting to each other. She would agree with what I've said. Because she was definitely not a a submissive slave to Aubrey, her husband. I mean, and oh my goodness, not at all. No.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you covered that one. Do you know the secrets behind Fascinating Womanhood? Do you watch the YouTube channel? I think it's so funny.
I do. I do now. Now, I have to admit, when I first met Dixie, I didn't know anything about Fascinating Women. And there was one day, I remember we were in the university bookstore and we were going by some, she said, oh, here's my mother's book. I said, oh, she wrote a book? She said, yeah, it sold like 100,000 copies. This was in the 60s, okay? And I said, oh, that's kind of neat. Well, anyway, I mentioned to my mother later, because I said, I'm dating this girl. She said her mother wrote Fascinating Womanhood. And my mom said, really? She did? Our book club just went over that book. That's really popular. Everybody's reading that. It's all over the place. I said, well, I'd never heard of it, but I kind of started thinking, wow. So I have to admit then, after we got married more, I don't remember getting into it before, but once we got married and I started learning a little bit more about things, I remember even reading pretty much most of it. I thought, gee, this is sound, because I was studying graduate school. I was in school in psychology and neuropsychology, and I was reading. I thought, these are very sound principles. You can't change another person. You got to work on yourself and show respect and admire and build somebody else up. And principles, I thought, gee, these are solid. This is solid stuff. And even now, after years and years of experience working with thousands of people, I can't even stop and count how many people I've seen and marriages I've seen and whatnot. These are sound principles.
Yeah.
And they work. They work.
So you know about them, but you've had to kind of learn about them gradually through time, like throughout the course of your.
Right. Well, and I got to say that Dixie I don't see her as using FW. This is just the way she is. She doesn't do methods or something. It's just her. She's not putting on an act or something.
That's what Fascinating Womanhood is meant to be. It's meant to be practiced in that way. It's just that she's just so, as you say, she's just so natural. It's just so natural for her that it's kind of amazing.
She's kind of amazing. How good she is. She's internalized it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one thing to learn something, but sometimes it can almost become part of you.
Yeah.
And she treats people, whether it could be relatives, people we meet. We went out to lunch the other day with a guy that I have an office and we share the office together, and he and his wife, and she's the same with them as she is with family or with me, or and I noticed that they came away and he said, my wife really liked your wife.
Aww.
And his wife is very much a career person, very successful woman. And even though you could say, well, Dixie's more traditional, but she thought she was really sharp.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that woman, because the next one kind of segues a little bit into that. And I feel like I know what your answer is going to be this one, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask, what advice do you have for women who are constantly surrounded by angry feminists in their family?
Well, we're around sometimes angry feminists. I find that the angry feminists are often very much in a victim position, and I actually feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
And I actually have some sympathy for women and their need for validation and their importance. I think women are incredibly important, and I think that everybody needs equal opportunities.
Yeah.
Now, equal outcome is a different thing. Now, I think it's in Canada, the prime minister made sure he had 50 women and 50 men on his committees or something. I think trying to make everything that equal is a little bit ridiculous. It's like trying to say, okay, everybody's got to have the same IQ and the same aptitude and the same height and weight and eye color. It just, there's a point. I mean, on a basketball team, you say, okay, everybody has to be equal. No, there's tall guys and there's short guys and there's fast guys and there's harder working guys. And, look, let's work together as a team. And I'd say, let's kind of find where we can work together rather than, what our differences are. So I'd say to women, I wouldn't get into some kind of battles with feminist women. In fact, I would encourage women to try to understand them, try to, in a way, use the concepts of feminine influence, because in a way, your example is more powerful than maybe trying to change somebody or argue with them about something. Show them you're a feminine woman who loves to be a woman and you don't feel victimized and you enjoy having great relationships with your husband and others. And you want to help and build people rather than whose rights are being trampled on and who's equal and who isn't, and, who the victims are and who needs to straighten all that stuff out.
Do you think couples with different religions can have a happy marriage?
To me, there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see people who are maybe religious who aren't necessarily spiritual, and spiritual people who aren't necessarily religious. I've seen people who have maybe different particular religious faiths that they belong to growing up or whatever. But if they have maybe a core faith together, I think that can be very uniting. I guess the answer in a general sense is, I think they can find common ground. And if they share values and principles that are, you could say, well, these are religious or, but maybe they're just good, sound human respect and responsibility ideas that may be promoted by different religions, even different races. So, I think generally the answer would be, yeah, sure.
I agree.
I think they can.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I love this one. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Should a woman ever pay for a date? We've had this. You'd be surprised how many times we're asked this. We're asked this all the time.
I suppose the simple answer to that is maybe. There might be times, but personally, I think if somebody invites me to dinner, I'll maybe have a colleague says, hey, come and have dinner with me or have lunch with me. If he's invited, he often feels somewhat responsible to pay. And I might say, hey, do you need me to chip into this or whatever? I would say if whoever invites has, because I don't know that it's fair to say, hey, let's go to dinner and okay, now you have to pay. It's like, I would say if you've invited, you should take some responsibility for that. And I think if a guy invites a girl out, maybe this sounds pretty traditional, but I'd say, I think he should be planning to pay for it and not expecting her to even chip in necessarily, although she might offer. But I would say if you invite, you pay it.
I like that. Yeah. I think that sometimes, those questions can be really complex and have tons of parts to it with financial things. But I think the general answer here is usually yes, for the most part.
Usually yes, because there may be some situation where I think I remember once, I can't remember, I think I forgot my wallet or something and we were dating and I can't remember exactly what it was, but you say, look, I got a little extra money here. Let me take care of this. There may be times, I don't know.
Do you think that men can tell or sense what women are struggling with internally?
I find that men aren't often as in touch with their feelings and not as sensitive in relationships as women are. I think women are a lot more trying to read a man or trying to understand the family or whoever the relationships they're in. Men are a little more, a little more task oriented in that sense. Like let's say we're going on a date. I'm thinking, okay, let's see, where are we going to go? What are we going to eat? Sort of more the task type things. I know for Dixie, that's a much more of a relationship issue. And I'm not as tuned into that. Although I have to admit, she has kind of helped me and taught me to be a little more sensitive to the relationship part of things. But guys don't get hints. I often say that I found partly because of the way the brain is set up, men are wired front to back. So they're more sort of focused and task oriented and target oriented. And so men don't tend to connect thoughts and feelings as well as women do. And so they're not as in touch with that. They need a little, they need a little bit of training, perhaps a little bit, and a lot of times a guy will say, well, I didn't pick up on that. What's going on there? Like mom will hint to me Christmas present or something, and I don't even get it. She said, well, I hinted. And I said, oh, was that a hint? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, okay. Now I get it, so.
Yeah, that's good. You explained that really well. What is your best tip for women to help their husbands feel like a man? I think this is talking about inspiring masculinity.
Yeah, I think personally, I like a woman who likes being a woman, who accentuates her femininity, and in a way that contrasts and brings out masculinity. Now, there's things she can do, just the way she looks, the way she dresses, her feminine manner, and so on. I love it. I love the way women move and look and dress up and put a little extra makeup on or something. I mean, you don't have to, actually, you go too far on all of these things, but I like the difference. I mean, if a girl, I don't know, let's say she dresses like a guy, I mean, he may think of her as a pal, but I don't know, where's the relationship in that? Yeah, we're just buds, but going to hang out together. But I like the differences and the attraction of it. And feminine woman just naturally kind of inspires me. And then if she actually goes beyond that and maybe verbally admires my masculinity, recognizes my core strengths, it makes me want to, appreciate and recognize hers more.
All right. The next two are about kind of the head, the brain. So
Okay.
we'll just address these two together.
Yeah.
Best tip for women who want to support a depressed husband.
Oh boy, that's a challenging one. I mean, I guess you can get into generalities. I just have to say, why is he depressed? And because depression, did he lose a job? Did he, is he got health problems? Or there can be so many possibilities. Is this a long-term thing? Has he been depressed for years? Maybe he's clinically depressed. Probably needs some professional help. I mean, a woman can do as much as she can by, supporting him and letting him know that she believes in him. Maybe he's lost his job. She can, look, you're gonna come through this. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be fine. Men get depressed, I think, for somewhat different reasons than women do. I think for men, a lot of times it has to do with not feeling competent, not being able to accomplish things they're trying to accomplish. There's just a number of possibilities there. So I guess I would say generally read Fascinating Womanhood and apply the principles.
Yeah. And if he needs help, support him getting help.
He may need professional help and maybe even medication, who knows? So,
that could be a whole video in of itself. I feel
that could be that's a whole video.
Okay. What about ladies? Does Fascinating Womanhood work for ladies that have kind of some mild disorders, like such as bipolar? I know bipolar can be mild and extreme, but let's just, for the sake of not having any details, let's just say more mild. Women that are kind of struggling with some of those milder problems. Can Fascinating Woman still apply to them?
These are timeless principles, and I think they work wherever you're coming from. If you will study them and find how they fit in your life and then apply them, there's going to be a benefit there. I don't know that some diagnostic category necessarily changes that, because if you have a desire to have a great relationship, here are principles that can help you do that. And I think they can have a great benefit because they're principles that work in relationships. They build relationships and make them better.
Let's see here. 3 more. Any advice for women who work with their husbands? The woman that asked this co-owns a business with her husband. Any advice?
Yeah, that's a real interesting one too. And I don't know, it might depend on the business. There's a lot of possibilities there, but I would say that recognizing in a relationship and an organization that works well, there's usually a task leader. And if you play to your strengths and then the relationship leader and they play to their strengths, this works in business as well as maybe in a home. And so if they discuss these concepts or these principles and where their core strengths are and try to play to their strengths, one may defer to the other in certain areas. And maybe in the more relationship areas, the one defers to the others. And I can't say that it's always the man that's the task leader and the woman is the relationship leader. Most of the time, I'd say generally that's true, but sometimes a woman is almost a little bit more of the task leader and the guy a little more of a relationship leader in the system. But a good organization has both that task or instrumental leadership and then more of that, what we call it relationship part in making a organization work well. So I would say use the concepts from the Fascinating Womanhood Timeless book.
I've heard you say this so many times that the way that you run your home and the way you run a family is kind of like a business. So I was wondering if you might answer that one in that way, that it's basically kind of the same, because in Fascinating Womanhood, we talk about the same thing, the task and the relationship leader as a family, the husband and the wife kind of working to their strengths. And I love that advice. It's kind of the same thing. It's just, you don't have, the exact same, you have a business that your actual business that you're running, but it's in a way the same.
I would say study those concepts and then work it out together,
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. You won't step on each other. There's an old saying that if two people are the same, one of them's unnecessary. So ideally, you have a division of labor and you learn to work together and bring in your strengths rather than everybody's trying to be the boss.
That's a really good point. I've never heard that. That's really interesting. Advice for women who make more money than their husbands.
I guess you can kind of decide, I suppose you could decide money is the main factor in a relationship. But to me, there's so much more in a relationship than the income. I mean, a woman can recognize her need for her husband so much beyond the money that's coming in. And if they're both maybe trying to contribute, let's just assume that she makes more, he's making money too, but it becomes somewhat of a joint responsibility and management issue to manage it well. And she can totally appreciate what he does.
Yeah.
And even though he may not be making as much money, they can work together and accomplish their goals. In a way, to me, it doesn't really matter who makes, the most. I know with Dixie's parents, when they were younger, he was a dentist and he got into land management and was just having huge success and making a ton of money. And then Fascinating Womanhood started selling, and they started selling, they were selling 20,000 books a month. I mean, he kind of had to shift some of his responsibilities over to that. And so I think they looked at it as, look, it's our money. And he was the one that financed the whole thing to get it started and going. I think they found a way to kind of work that out as well, playing to each of their strengths.
I've heard mom say, it's only a problem if you make it a problem.
Right. I think so. I think it's a problem if you see it as somehow a competition for control or superiority or who gets the credit for what. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Last one, best tip for women in the workplace.
Again, that's a very interesting question, but I would just say, as we've had women, I remember, I think there was one woman she communicated with, said she dressed up feminine at work, but got made kind of fun of her. I think we said to her, when men are around a feminine woman, they feel at a little bit of a disadvantage. They feel a little bit vulnerable. And I'd say, be 100% woman, be feminine and go in and do your work and realize this is a strength for you. And if they're kind of teasing you about looking pretty or dressing up or whatever, consider it a compliment, even though you may take it personally and say, oh, they're making fun of me. No, not really. They just don't know what to do with you. They don't know how to handle you.
Do you have women like at the hospitals that you've encountered that are kind of like, you can sense maybe that they're maybe afraid or hesitant to be feminine? Have you experienced that?
At the hospital, typically a lot of the women will wear some kind of medical garb.
Right.
But still, I noticed that some will fix up their hair and they'll add that little extra feminine touch. I don't think that hurts them at all. I think it's actually in many ways a benefit, because I think there are some women who I just got to be, neither masculine or feminine. I'm just going to do my job. And I guess that's okay. I mean, that's a personal choice, but I still encourage women to, whatever their situation, be feminine about it.
Well, and even if these women are not fixing up, I'm curious from your perspective, if you've ever worked with a woman who maybe doesn't necessarily fix up as much, but she acts feminine, and how that makes you feel about her when you're at work.
Okay. Yeah. So not just appearance, but her, I think women tend to have an advantage in relationships. And a woman that's good at that is going to do great in the workplace and play to her strengths. She doesn't have to, be like a man. And when I see women trying to be kind of tough like a guy, I think, that she's not playing to her strengths.
I agree. And the only reason why I wanted to nitpick this one a little bit more is because I do think that it's very, very misunderstood. And we get so many questions, and perhaps we need to do another video on this one, because a lot of women think that they act this way at work, as you mentioned earlier, act this way, and then they come home and they struggle with that shift because perhaps they're exhausted, or perhaps they are expected to do a lot of tasks at work and they just feel like they're not able to focus on relationships. And I think from a man's perspective, I just thought it would be interesting to hear what you had to say about what you see when you see those women. You see, oh, she's not, what's she, what's going on with her? I don't know.
I think it's confusing in a way, because you might have a job where you kind of have to be a bit of a task leader, and hopefully in that organization there's some relationship leaders, but it may not. You may be in a position of some management position where you have to take that on. I've had women say they don't really like it. They just learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And they do it. And then, like you say, it's hard to kind of maybe come home and shift more into the relationship role. See, because that's something you have to work out in a way with your husband, how you're going to work together. Because to me, a great marriage is where you've learned how to work together and support each other, not compete with each other.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of communication and making adjustments and so on. And so doing that from work to home, that's tricky. But I really think that some of the principles especially in Timeless, help you address the issue. And if you know what's going on, you say, I have to be a little more of a task leader at work. At home, I can be a little bit more what I really enjoy as a relationship leader. Understanding it, I think, can help you make better decisions and be more flexible or adjust to the different situations more easily.
Thank you so much for answering so many questions. We had about 15 more, and I had to just do the ones that I felt like kind of went together, as well as we've been asked several times. So, and thank you everybody out there that submitted the questions. We really appreciate all of your participation. And if you don't know what we're talking about when we talk about Timeless, Fascinating Womanhood, no worries. All of the links attached to this video have all the places that you can buy these books and study these principles. So check those out after you're done watching this video. We are also on social media, so you'll have to check out our Facebook page and our Instagram. You can also drop a comment down below this video if you have any additional questions. We'd love to hear from you. And we're here every week, so don't forget to hit subscribe so that you know when we have a new video coming out. And thanks again so much for answering all these questions for us today. I know I really enjoyed it. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Okay.
All right. Bye.